budget request from staff, from management for the period April 20th to 9/30, from April to September 2020. Total operating budget of 1,366,000. Total capital outlay of 1,503,000 for a grand total budget of 2,869,000. I so move.
Mr. Boyd,
Yes.
I would recommend the motion should be it's a recommendation from the Budget and Audit Committee, not necessarily from staff, since you're recommending it to the board.
Okay. So I should rephrase the motion to say what?
That the Budget and Audit Committee is recommending the approval of the 2020 Havenside Mall budget in the amount of 2,869,275, and then you could break it down if you wanted to.
Can I just say so move on to that?
Yeah, that works.
Second.
Trustee Coward,
Yes.
Trustee Barry,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger,
Yeah.
Trustee McDonald, absent. Trustee Smith, excused. Chairman Calendar,
Yes.
5 yes, 1 absent, 1 excused.
All right. The 2020 fiscal year 2020 Havenside Mall budget has been approved. Item number 2, discussion on GERS funding task force. Who wants to take the lead?
You.
I'll step on this. I wish him luck. If he can find people to sit the board and come up with ideas we haven't thought of, great. Unfortunately, I'm not real hopeful for a successful and realistic proposal.
You have 4 months.
I'm with you on that. Very much with you on that one. I mean, to me, the size and the composition of the task force doesn't seem to mesh with the mission as is stated. I mean, it is supposed to be not a decision-making board, but what's the term?
Advisory.
Like a think tank.
It's a board to give advice. What's the exact term?
Advisory.
It's advisory board.
Advisory, that's the word I'm looking for. Thank you. It's not advisory board. I've never seen an advisory board with 12 members.
12 members, that's a lot.
That's a clue right there that is not going to be a productive board. I mean, and if the mission is to give technical advice, which is what it seems like, because it says the mission is to come up with a funding plan. So that seems to me like a purely a technical presentation. So I mean, it's not clear to me. I'll just say what the trustees said, that I don't have much hope for productive result from that board.
Not only that, the size of the board is very large. The timeline is not practical either, I don't think.
But the timeline is being driven by the fact that we're going to be, I mean, whatever has to go in place soon.
Before November.
Yes.
So I mean, the timeline is realistic in that sense to me, because we don't have a lot of time really. Put whatever needs to go in place has to go in place now for it to take effect. I mean, by the time that they take to convene that to name those board members and convene, don't forget that the legislature approved a board for the cannabis bill a year and a half ago, and the board hasn't been impaneled as yet.
It's true.
A year and a half ago.
Mhm.
And that wasn't 12 board members. That was much less than 12. Like 8 or 7 or something like that. So I don't see how that's I don't know. I don't hold out much hope for anything coming out of that, quite frankly.
Well,
Mr.
let us just hope the best come out of it.
I have a question.
Whatever that is.
Mr. Ligo or Mr. Nibs, because you guys were here when the Young did his task force. I remember, because I think Avery and them were on it, so I remember when they started that. That was the same concept, but it wasn't the same process.
Where was this? Well, the thing was to come up with some type of recommendation in regards to mostly was structural changes. Obviously, the funding issue was always there, but we changed the age, retirement. We submitted a lot of legislation, and 98% of what the board recommended was approved.
But that legislation
And now here's where I'm going with that.
didn't come from the board.
The GRS was part of that process.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And this go around, considering the text I sent you guys, apart from when that executive order came out, was anybody even approached or contacted or questioned prior to the executive order?
Well, like I said, I think about less than a year ago, I had a meeting with the governor and he brought it up. And he
Before
said,
we had the retreat in St. Croix.
yes, and I told him, well, I told him that, I told him about the prior task force and what they did. And he asked me, who I think should be on it and all of that. I said, somebody from the legislature, maybe the Committee on Finance chair. I said, GRS should have a representative on there. I see that there's nothing about GRS in there, in his executive order. But I don't know what more we can give them or what we can tell them. And even if there's a GRS member on the board, on this advisory committee, it's going to be, they're not going to listen. Because we already given them the information and they have not responded. So what more can we do? We even went and we gave them the idea about approaching the U.S. Treasury. We're the ones that did that. And we would have done the loan through GRS. It wouldn't have been the plan sponsor. We had planned to do that. And he did tell me that he did speak with the Secretary of Treasury in his last meeting, but I'm not sure what more we can do. We did all the studies that we have had to have done. The last governor went out and got another study, told him the same thing. We did the white paper. It's there in black and white what is needed. Funding, monies, what are needed. So, but like I said, to me it's very short. It's a short time to come up with, with issues or, with recommendations. And I did see that he talked about having professional experts. I know the last time that they asked to use the actuary, or they would ask us, can we use your actuary, or they would call the actuary, and then a bill came in for $80,000, and they didn't want to pay. So if they're going to
Who paid that bill, Mr. Davis?
we had to pay the bill. If they're going to ask for any technical assistance, they would have to have a contract with Seagull directly. The last time we had to pay, I sent it to Government House, and they said no. You paid. You were part of the group. So, but like I said, I think we have supplied everything that they need to make a decision. I don't know what more can be added.
That's why I kind of think that I don't have as much concerned about the time frame. If if they were going to jump in and and get to work right away, because as you said, all the studies are there. They just have to start with the last one and move on. You don't have to go back through the last report detail in lots of detail what the problem is and what you need to fix it. We've had at least 5 reports since then, all confirming the same thing. They don't have to go through that. They could start, if they start from there and move forward and say, okay, this is what the reports say. This is how much money we need for the program, and focus the attention on developing funding options, and it's a technical, it's a technical review with it could be squeezed into 4 months, I think, if they focus it that way. But my concern is that it won't happen that way. I mean, just by the composition of the board, we're gonna have to 12 members. It's gonna take us 4 months to assemble the 12. I think.
All right, trustees, if you,
Can I call you right now?
trustees, if you look at the third whereas,
Chantel trying to call you.
huh?
Chantel.
Okay, look at the third whereas. Whereas the existing GERS system board and administrator oversight are in need of critical review and overhaul for the benefit and protection of so on, et cetera, et cetera. Unless I'm reading this
I read it.
sentence incorrectly,
Saying that
then there's no need to put one of us on the board, because he's already saying that we don't know what we're doing, unless I'm misreading that sentence. And then on the fifth whereas, about the district court, what does that have to do with a plan to save the system? Again, the system is being criticized for carrying out our fiduciary responsibility. We went to court, we got a judgment, and this is included in his executive order. Again, we're being blamed for something else. And none of those two things just don't make sense to me. So don't expect to serve on his advisory committee.
Well, I wasn't looking for, so I was just wondering if the conversation had even come, because when you're planning, because my complaints for this past year and a half is that we're hearing things in public, the Safe for Education, the same time as everybody else. So the same thing happened here where GRS hears about it the exact same time. I wasn't looking to see if he's going to put one of us or Mr. Nibbs on that task force. Just the fact that this came out without saying, well, I'm about to do this, or, not necessarily seeking permission, but at least a courtesy that this is what's coming out.
Well, we wrote, we got no response from the letter we wrote either.
True. Okay.
Well, everybody is saying that the board is bad, so the governor has to follow up with that.
Yeah, right.
He has to follow up with that because he wants to be reelected.
That's a long time off from me now. Any other comments on this? I mean, there's nothing we can do about it. Just wait and see and do what we're doing.
Well, I hope we wouldn't have to say, I told you so.
Well, he's had plenty of time from even before he became governor. He came to one of the NCPers meetings. And of course, he thought he knew how to solve the problem of GIS then.
Yeah. His idea was a 401k, it was changing everybody into 401k, or, he realized it's not possible. So, but apparently, I guess they're going to be looking at some of our recommendations when they look at the mission. for funding. So some of the things that we gave them, they're going to be looking at, I assume, because they said they're going to explore certain options for the short term, for the bailout, and for different things. So with any luck, our proposals and other things that we have submitted for years, and they're going to go through those. Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
How does that tie in, Mr. Nibbs? How does that, or Kathy, how does that tie into legislative responsibility of funding?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? How does what tie into?
Because they're talking about finding the money.
Mhm.
So, and obligations. Will they be making recommendations for changes also?
It appears from the order that they're looking for ways of they say amend current law and propose language for changes. I just hope they understand that these changes cannot affect the current members, that the changes can only be for new members coming in, because they're going to be tied up in lawsuits and not just from the retirees. They're going to be tied up in lawsuits from the actives if they try to change some of the benefits that they promised at this point in a person's career, especially for those members that are vested.
I have a question. Mr. Nibbs, did you say that that the system could in fact issue a loan, borrow money?
yes, we have that authority.
Yes, that provision is in the code.
All right, put on your thinking cap.
Huh?
Put on your thinking cap now.
That's
I'm
the
just
reason.
trying to. Well, forget about the fact that. So how much money are we talking about if you're going to borrow money?
2 billion.
2 billion.
Okay. So explain to me how you think you could go to somebody to borrow $2 billion when all your reports saying you're going to be bankrupt in 2 weeks, 3 years.
Going to the federal government.
Going to the federal government,
Right.
U.S. Treasury.
And Mr. Bowery, what the loan called for was to borrow $2 billion to get a moratorium on any payments for a minimum of 10
Okay.
years so that you would have time to grow the $2 billion. Also, it requested that the loan be a 2%, 3% interest rate. And so
So
that,
it's a federal government.
yes, it was a federal loan from the Treasury Department. And given the 2 or 3%, a moratorium on payments for 10 years or more, if possible, it was estimated that GRS would have been able to invest the money based on its prior history of returns and then be able to pay back benefits. It also did require that the government increase the employer contributions because we didn't want to get the loan and immediately start paying the deficit. So the employer would have had to increase their contribution rate.
Oh, okay. And the code authorizes that?
Yes, it does. I can send you the provisions afterwards.
We also went out and had our interviews with an insurance company. Also, where we would have pledged, I think it was the members' life insurance policies.
Right.
But that wasn't too much in our favor. When we mentioned it to the governor and the legislature on November 25th, they were saying, well, why didn't you go ahead with it? We said that it wasn't in our best interest. And they wanted to do it. I gave the information to one senator. I don't know what he did with it.
Yeah, the way it was structured, the members would have had to agree to let this company or let GRS have life insurance policies on their life. The members would have gotten a certain percentage of the life insurance, well, their beneficiaries would have gotten a percentage, and then GRS would have recouped the rest. but the way they wanted to structure it, it would have only yielded about $100,000 up front for GRS, which wasn't
And
beneficial.
they wanted the responsibility to invest the monies and not
Yeah,
us.
they would have invested the money, we wouldn't have had any control over it, and again, we would have only realized $100,000 immediately, which was not sufficient for us to do anything
I
with.
think GRS has gone over and beyond trying to secure funding for this, and that's not our responsibility, really. That's the responsibility of the plan sponsor and the legislature.
Tony Williams, any comments?
No, sir.
None? Okay. Okay, any other comments, any other trustee? Anyone else? Anybody? Well, thank you all for your comments. Next item, board retreat. Who wants to address that? Mr. Nibbs?
A few meetings ago, the board retreat was scheduled for July. We usually have it in July. And there were some discussions as regard to whether it should be virtual or in person. And it was like tabled for further discussion. A board retreat, it takes a while to put a board retreat together. Need at least a good 2 to 3 months lead time. It's not going to be, if it's virtual, it's not going to be as hard as prior years because our professionals used to have outside providers, had to have had, airline reservations, hotel, and all of that stuff. We usually would have the actuaries, we would have the investment advisor, we would have the CPAs, the auditors, we would have invite attorneys from our firms to give governance training and ethics training, which is a requirement, an annual requirement. So I'm not sure, there's no hotel open where we'll have to social distance. A retreat it's best for retreat to be in person because you get that synergy. With a virtual retreat, people talking over each other, there's a lot of gabble, technical problems. So we may have to just, I think what we should do, my recommendation would be to move it out further and we wait until we see what's going to happen with the COVID. Because our retreats are usually 3 or 4 days. And I would rather have it in a setting, a large setting where you can distance.
Just to mention, I see that Carambola has been adding that they are open for business. So I agree with Mr. Nibbs. I don't think the attorneys doing the governance training would travel, but they could appear by Zoom. So that wouldn't be a problem. You'd probably want your actuary in person because you need to have that.
Well, they have asked me, Alwyn asked me a couple of weeks ago. I told him that we didn't come up with a date because of the COVID situation, but the actuaries could be in person too.
Yeah.
And the advisors can be in person.
Or
in virtual.
Yes, yeah. And, if you did it someplace like in the Carambola big boardroom, you'd have to fix it so you spaced everybody out.
Plus you have a lot of visuals. We usually have a lot of visuals. So, all of that would have to be, if you're going to do it virtual, we have to coordinate all of that, make sure everything is okay, packages, So I would need at least, Mr. Chairman, a good 60 or 90 days lead time to prepare. Because
Okay, so you're talking about earliest October.
Correct.
And you'd want to do it before the big tourist season because some people will still come down here to avoid the cold. And so you don't want to have it at that time when the hotel is going to be crowded and full of people coming from places like Florida and Texas, which are COVID disaster areas. So it's something you need to think about so that we don't put ourselves at risk.
It can be done virtually. However, like I'm saying, some people may not be comfortable with it because you're going to be switching slides here, switching slides there, and all of that stuff. And like I say, a retreat is where you have that camaraderie and you can sit down and talk and mingle and discuss anything. You know, you just get that that togetherness type feeling. But
And limited distraction.
yes, that's true. When we went to the BVI, that was the best because we didn't have any phone ringing and people wasn't getting up. And even the service provider said that was the best one that they ever attended because we were in isolation.
You were held hostage.
Okay, and it didn't cost us. It cost us probably less than having it in St. Croix. It wasn't that. It wasn't. It was just about the same or a little less. We had it in St. John at the West End a couple of times. Maybe we need to look at the West End and see they open it up, right? I think they open up.
Timeshares are open,
Timeshares.
yeah.
Okay. You know, but like I say, it's a decision that have to be made. I would prefer in person. However, if we're going to do it virtually, it's a time. We have to have some time to prepare the slides and coordinate everything so it could flow correctly. We'll have to get the service providers on board as far as their scheduled time. So I think right now, the way things are, I wouldn't think that we should do anything between now and September because it's a lot of uncertainties unless the board thinks otherwise.
But you should have a tentative date so you can start to
Yeah,
plan
well, you know,
around it and check
well,
availability. But tell people don't make any commitments, but just reserve the time and you could start to plan around it. See what's available. See if the Western is taking groups. You know, see if not where you could go and just have a plan so that when you decide to go with it.
There is another option.
Yes, sir.
We could have a scaled down version and do it virtually.
Sure.
I mean, I understand everybody, you know, we all prefer the camaraderie and stuff. There's no question about that. That's the same issue my son has. He's getting ready to go to college and he wanted to go away for that reason, but he ended up having to do it from home. So, you know, I mean, we couldn't get him to apply to go to UVI because he wanted to go away to twice. He wanted that experience to just, you know, to him going to UVI would be still in just going to a 13th grade instead of going to you know.
University.
Yeah, and so the idea, I mean, the selling point for him was he wanted this new experience, meeting people, camaraderie, and lo and behold,
He's home.
He's home.
I remember those days. You couldn't wait to leave home and be on your own.
I mean, the point I'm making is that there's no question about whether I prefer the in place or the in person thing, but this is in your normal. So I mean, so one other option to consider is having it virtually, but having it more focused. I don't know if in the past, do we have like a theme? Is that an area we want to focus on in any particular?
Yeah, we did that. I think we did have teams last time, yes.
Right.
Yes, we can scale it down a bit. We don't need an in-depth about the investments like we used to.
Right.
We don't really have any managers really. So that can be scaled back. We already, Siegel has already given us a lot of information, so that can be an update, that can be scaled back. What I would recommend if we're gonna be looking at doing a strategic plan for the next 5 years for the system and incorporate, we may need one also, we will need one also for Havenside. Maybe we can do that at the board retreat, bring in the budget and the budget, you know, a lot of things can happen. But that's a budget committee function. I don't want to step on Trustee Borry's thing. But I mean, all of that we can.
You're welcome. You're permitted.
Oh, okay.
Just for that.
Yeah, maybe that can be discussed. I mean, and that would keep some people's attention, I would think, because we're looking at probably scaling back, you know, as much as we can. So.
Yeah, we could look at
The other thing we could do is, as a theme, is to two things. One is to, notwithstanding the governor's,
COVID.
notwithstanding his task force, that we could start our own discussion about options, available options. Because the other thing is that what one of the things that have been in my mind is that we probably need to start to prepare our retirees for life after insolvency. I don't know what that looks like, but I think somehow we have a duty. I mean, if we, as we see insolvency coming, then is there some things we could do to start to prepare or somehow insulate our retirees for what's coming?
Well, that was one thing we thought about when we were looking to go to Treasury for the loan, because our thing was that if this does not happen, the Treasury Department, you would have a lot of people, you would have uncompensated care for the retirees, more people will be on food stamps. A lot of retirees probably move to the mainland so that they can have access to SSI. I saw Guam on a case some days ago.
And also the cost of living is cheaper.
Yeah, so it would have been a burden on the retirees. So we were trying to see if we could have gotten that loan, so at least we could have invested those monies so that the system could have gone forward. But now we know that's not going to happen. But I understand what you're saying. Maybe we can bring in some financial professionals to help us.
Or what we can do is
to
do like a podcast type thing. So
Yeah.
that the members could go online and listen to it, because we obviously can't do anything in person these days. So we could look at maybe doing webinars or something like that on financial.
Which is part of
stability,
what
yeah.
we're supposed to be doing, yes.
Yeah, so we could look at webinars and podcasts. And what they can do to scale down for insolvency. And we need to also give it to some of the active members too, because we have a lot of active members who are a year, 2 years away from retirement. And I'm telling
Exactly.
people, you need to think about your retirement seriously, because if you know it and you retire today and in 3 years you're going to get 25% of your annuity and you're too young for Social Security, how are you going to manage? Kmart is in trouble, so you might not be able to work at Kmart. What other jobs are there where you can get a part-time job in the territory?
Yeah.
So we need to
so-
also do some planning for the actives.
Yeah, we need as much psychological advice as financial. We got to start preparing folks for dealing with this thing. I mean, the psychological damage is going to be as bad as the financial damage.
Exactly.
So I think that's one thing we could do as a theme. Try to begin to figure something out. How do we start to prepare retirees, and as you said, the actives? How do we start to prepare them for life after insolvency?
Another topic, if I may jump in, that we need to focus in seriously and in some creative manner is Havensite Mall. If we're going to try to keep it, how can we redirect it to turn it into something that will be, profitable and realistic, knowing what's going on with the cruise industry. So I think some of that discussion needs to be included and give us a perspective of what we're going to do with that in 5 years.
I agree with you 1,000% on that, sir. I agree with you. I think we need to. I don't think we ought to necessarily assume that the way forward is the way we came from. We probably need to have some analysis of what would be the highest and best use for that property in the new as we move forward. I agree with that 100%.
Okay, so Mr. Excuse me, 1 second. Mr. Dave, you can start thinking or planning for some type of retreat, probably in October.
I would
Where
I would sit and see, and I'm hearing from what I'm listening to, it seems like it's leaning towards a virtual scale down retreat, a virtual type presentation. This is what I'm hearing. If I can
Okay.
if we can get adequate space, it doesn't have to be a 3-day or 4-day. It can be 2 days or 3 instead of 4. So I'll come up with something. I'll make a recommendation. But
Okay.
I like what Trustee Bowery was talking about.
Okay. So that's on you. Okay. Okay, unfinished business, board governance policy. Trustee
That would be
Caldwell.
me. Okay, so in your packet you had what I thought was the latest version, but that was the last one that I did. Attorney Williams had sent me his redacted, cleaned up version, so I sent that to you this morning. So same, everything is basically the same. It just was cleaner than the one you had. So is there anybody who has not looked at it? I know Trustee Barry, you hadn't had a chance to go through it. Have you had a chance to go through it now?
Yeah.
And Mr. Liger, did you get a chance to refresh yourself?
Not the one you sent this morning.
No, it's the same thing. It's just clean. Just what we went through was changing some words, like from board member to trustee. I had missed a few. Everything else was the corrections we had already made. So the one that you had gotten before. So they're just mostly cosmetic.
All right.
But I wanted to go over quickly the main changes that we went over, Trustee Barry and Cohen and I, with Attorney Williams after getting the information from Attorney Smith. We basically finalized it. So let me make sure I'm going to pull up. What we worked on. So
You
that...
sent it this morning, you said?
Yes. So what happened is, there it is. So it's just basically the cleaner version with less mistakes. Oh, what did I do? I made a boo-boo. Everybody seeing it?
I am.
Yeah.
You got to teach me how to do this.
Oh, share screen. It's at the bottom. We'll do it next time you're over here.
Okay.
So basically, the main changes from what we originally started, Mr. Liger, we added, of course, in meetings, we added what we can do for distance meetings. We added electronic meeting section.
Okay.
So we added, that's a completely new section that was never in the original one that we started with. So it talks about how, because in the past, if you weren't in physical attendance, your vote didn't count originally, and that says everybody's now turning to virtual meetings. We made sure we made provisions that if any trustee had to be away and once they could participate electronically, they should have full coverage of the meeting as if they were present.
But didn't we rectify this matter in reference to trustees couldn't vote if they were not present?
Yes, but now because of the fact that nobody's physically present, we had to make provisions.
Okay.
So that's why this is now an issue, not just for us, but for most boards and even legislature. Because if you are visual, if you are here and we can see you, technically present. The other time they were doing it on phone, that's when they weren't considered official. But if you're in the Zoom meeting, you're electronically present. So having the responsibilities and being able to participate fully should be allowable based on the fact that everybody can see you and you're participating in live time.
Can I say something to qualify that?
Yeah.
If you were on the phone and in country, in the territory, you could have voted, but if you were off island, you could not vote.
And just to clarify that was a policy. It was not in the bylaws, because the bylaws did not strictly prohibit you from being on the phone and voting. That was just a policy.
A policy, yes.
Of the board.
Right, and we did take care of that.
Yeah, but now we put it in our policy that you can, once you're, because of situations like this, you don't know if it's going to ever happen again. It's not a standard, and you still have to let someone know in advance. You can't just wake up and say, I don't feel like going to the meeting. You generally will let the chairperson know that, that you're going to be off island, or you're going to be wherever your situation is, and the chairperson or will acknowledge the fact that you'll be in attendance via whatever medium you've chosen. So we went through.
But it has to be in one of these Zoom-like apps, right? I mean, you can't stay on your phone and do it.
Well, you can do Zoom on your phone, but in the past, remember we talked about this, went through video conference online, or any other electronic, because in the past, if we were traveling, we would let someone know and let them know we're going to call in. So you participated via telephone in the past, but someone knew the chair knew in advance, so they'll let when doing roll call, they'll say, well, Trustee Callwood will be joining us by phone. It wasn't like, oh, the meeting started and I decided I don't feel like driving downtown and jump on the phone.
Is there anything special you have to do for an executive session meeting if you're off island? I mean,
in the past, we just basically declared everybody else off the line except for board members. When it came to executive session, Mr. Niv would clear everybody else off the line.
Okay.
And we've done it in the past. People were on via VTC and on the phone. Because when we started using, well, you didn't remember, you weren't there. We started using VTC more and more because we're trying to limit travel time. Seaborn was sketchy, and then it was cost effective.
Okay.
So you studied, those are electronic mediums, and then now with Zoom, Teams, or whatever other online meeting programs, we are now able to do it where, apart from physical touch, the person is technically in the room. So section L has been added as electronic meetings. And also, Trustee Ligo, one of the things we went through and made some changes with trustee responsibilities and how we should approach conversations outside. We did spend quite a bit of time on that during the meeting, making sure, of course, we talked about the trustee's responsibility, come prepared, showing up to meetings, being cordial, and working on your own. The code of conduct is now written in. We did have the discussion on nepotism and how it pertains to our territory versus others, because the fact that this is a VI and everybody is almost everybody's related some form or fashion. So it's very difficult, but we try to make it with less of an appearance of nepotism. So you can't always avoid nepotism because of the relationship statuses, but to avoid the appearance of nepotism. So we did that. And then we spent some time on trustee representation and discussion. I'm trying to find that page. Everything else is the same. While I look, we were talking about going out into and having conversation as a trustee, representing yourself. I'm trying to find the page. If somebody calls, if you're going to go to a radio station and we're doing Trustee Barry, we can speak on it. The fact that if you do remember last week, Trustee Barry did an article 2 weeks ago, op-ed, and making sure trustee communication. Here we go.
Page 40, maybe?
Yeah, it's here. It's right here. I just found it.
Okay.
How we utilize communication, especially external communication. We speak it. You can speak as yourself, but the representation of the board and the system should be done by the chair or somebody designated by the chair. So to make sure that no trustee is tied into not being able to speak their mind, we have to go through this wording and make sure that we made it possible for trustees to speak for themselves, even though they are a member of the board, as long as it's stated that we're not speaking on behalf of the board unless we've been designated to do so by the chair. So we talked about communication with plan participants, communication with GRS management and staff, communication with external parties, and that the chair is the spokesperson along with the administrator. This is where we spent quite a bit of time when it came to subsection 2. Because a lot of times you may be called or even approached by somebody in the media, especially now with all these online, they ask you questions. Oh, you're on the board, what do you think? And they ask you for an interview. Unless everybody's welcome based on the policy, everybody's welcome to do so, as long as you're not representing that you are speaking on behalf of the GRS. In order to speak on behalf of GRS, you need permission of the board chair. If I'm speaking as Carol Callwood, who happens to be a member of the board, or Mr. Vincent Liger, who happens to be a member of the board, by speaking and I touch bases on, that's fine. But if you're going, as long as you're not representing the board and saying, I'm speaking on behalf of the board says this, that's where this goes.
Well, I'm glad you have it in writing, but in my time on the board, I thought this was a matter that was generally understood. Yeah,
because
only the chairman could actually speak on behalf of the board or the administrator. Anybody else could speak on their own behalf. I thought this was generally understood.
And that's the thing. A lot of this was understood, and because we never really had a policy, and that's why the policy, everything that's in this document is stuff that we've always done or talked about or that's carried over since before you and I came on. But there was never anything in the document, so we pulled everything into one document for those to come.
Okay.
Attorney Williams, anything else I need to touch bases on? There are 2 items that we did not quantify. Attorney Smith.
Well, maybe keep going. If you go to page 46 on the
the wrong direction.
Limitation, and then we'll go back.
Okay. Okay. This is 46.
Page 46?
Mm-hmm.
well, my 46. Yeah, right there. Number 6.
Yeah.
We need to have a limit on the value of gifts that can be received by trustees, including meals and entertainment.
Because Mr. Liger, you remember like back in the day, anybody could offer trustees gifts or anything. They'll come and they'll give you whatever. And I think over the past 10 years, they've started minimizing it. And then as we go to different conferences, you hear all of the horror stories from other districts where people are getting arrested, fired, relieved of their duties because they got golf clubs from this person, or they took a ride, they took a boat trip with another person, or situations like that. So we were looking at to make sure that we're covered here also, but it's I don't know what kind of amount or figure because for the most part we don't do gifts on purpose.
But I thought we had a policy as $25 for the most. I thought that's what I understood many years ago. The trustees was always prohibited of accepting gifts, expensive gifts and things of that sort. And I believe either $25 or $35 was the maximum that a trustee can receive.
I remember having the conversation, but that's why it's here as nothing, because I couldn't remember what
that's why you need to have it in writing so that everybody can turn to it. I mean,
so I don't know. That's why we left it blank, because I needed to get some feedback from everybody else.
But does anybody remember the amount? Am I correct in saying $25?
I don't remember. I know we were having that conversation.
Huh?
That was the one before Dr. Cohen. But I remember the conversation one time because we were talking. I think we had just come back from someplace where somebody had gotten in some kind of trouble or something on the mainland. And in fact, that we didn't do it down here as much as they do. You know, only time we ever go out was when we did something as a body, where they were being taken out and basically charmed by people left, right, and center all the time. But we didn't have that down here.
Right, because I thought there was some sort of policy, maybe word of mouth policy, where even if you were taken to a dinner, it couldn't be more than $25.
That's what I remember the conversation. But in St. Thomas, we told you St. Thomas $25 when you get a sandwich for lunch. In Croix, you could get a plate of food at night time for $25, but in St. Thomas, you can't even get a plate of food for lunch.
Well,
didn't you say that some folks said that they couldn't accept, they had to pay for their own dinner?
Yeah, and they had, and that's what they had at their that's where they had their policy cap. So in order the person can go beyond, so if they're taken to dinner, they have to write down exactly how much they had and have the receipt showing that the person didn't pay more than $40 for their dinner. So they actually had a log sheet showing that for the month, I went to lunch. Even if they went to lunch with this person, they had to show the receipt because they had to make sure there was no improprieties.
And one of the reasons is because every trustee was given money
per diem.
Right, for the meals.
Yeah. So what do we want to?
Well,
what figure do we want to put here? And remember, the amount is adjusted biannually to reflect cost of living.
If you put $50 in there, we won't have to touch it for a little while.
Well, letter C talks about had the $50 limit. I was trying to think. But I think this was a total. A, I think, was total cumulative value for the year. For any part that letter C talks about, nothing should go over $50 per, But A was supposed to be for the year.
Why the silence?
Throw the number.
Mr. Chair, you should answer that question.
Well, I have 9 more months on the board. I don't think it will be reasonable.
It's not for you. It's for who to come. I might have a month. We don't know. We're all on borrowed time. So
I would allow those members who will be here longer than me make a suggestion.
That would be Barry and Cohen.
You guys have any guidance? I mean, anything we could look at so what other people do? I mean,
that's why I got the 250 from. The 250 is what I pulled from other places. Everybody basically had 250.
250 for the
year, cumulative.
Oh, you have a number.
But remember, that's from above, but I hadn't put it. That was charitable contributions and everything else. Everything almost everywhere is always 250. You always see 250. Like that's a standard. Even with taxes now, 250 is like the standard. If you donate someplace, they cap it at 250.
But that 250 can be a one-time or
that's cumulative. That's for the whole year. Anything that you get from wherever should not ever exceed 250 total.
All right, if everybody else is doing 250, it's a standard, so let's just adopt it.
That's a good idea. Well, we need to move on. So yeah, I'll go along with Trustee Cohen's suggestion.
Do we need a motion?
No, we're just fixing it. Okay.
We need something for
the next. What are you saying, Miss Trustee Bowen? Sorry.
C is good at 50.
Yes.
So the other thing was 2 questions that I had. I had left it for Attorney Williams to touch bases with Attorney. I think we fixed that already. Attorney Williams, page 23. We've already.
You need to go back to page 16.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a discussion the trustees need to have.
Well, look at what the 23. That's something that's what we fixed, right? That's fixed. Consistent with the electronic medium. That language is fine?
I'm not. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And then so now back up. I'm going up 16. Right here.
Well, that's 17, but that's fine. You could do that one first.
Okay. When we were in the discussion we were having, and this is where we were talking about having conversation, well, outside, but then we also at times are called upon to state a position on certain things that's coming out of legislature. So I'm going to go to where it is. So to carry out policies, the board directs staff to reasonable efforts to advocate for passage of legislation or regulation sponsored or supported by the board. A case in point, last month, Mr. Nibbs had to go in front of the legislature, and we talked about, are we in support of this, or do we have? And we said, well, we have no say so because it doesn't matter to us. So we looked at, this is where we talk about what do we do? Do we support it, stay neutral, or actively speak against it? So that if you're going to sponsor or support legislation, we support legislation, and these are the reasons, we adopt the position of support if the legislation or the recommendations are consistent with objectives, providing sound support retirement plan for the members, if it expands or improves the benefits and services, if it increases resources to address equity issues, if it improves the delivery of benefits and services, if they're consistent with the investment policy adopted by the board, if they preserve the assets, if they reduce inequities or deficiencies, if they give more flexibility to the board administration of the system, if it improves the opportunity for members to save, if it attempts to secure and obtain monies owned by a plan sponsor, or if it seeks to expand access to healthcare for GERS members in a prudent manner, we are in full support of these legislations, and we will say that. When it came to taking the neutral position, or a position of saying we have no position, one, if it does not significantly or adversely impact the benefits and services, as in the last legislation that we had discussed, or this is the one where the concern was, does it affect the composition of the board or process by which individuals are appointed to serve as members of the board. The board may, however, sponsor support provisions of legislation deemed necessary to clarify or implement enacted legislation that either provides for the election of members or otherwise changes the composition of the board. So, as in the case of what they tried to do last time. We recommended just taking it out. I think just taking it out. But what is the feedback?
I still verbalize taking it out. Because this is
Dr. Canada, Mr. Liger.
You want to take it number 3?
2B, the highlighted B.
2B.
Yes.
Maybe the simple way to look at it is, does the board want to be in a position that if the governor or senator sponsors a piece of legislation that says the board should be comprised of X amount of persons with these types of qualifications and that type of legislation? That's basically what 2 is saying.
Pedro, you kind of froze up there for a minute.
Yeah, you gotta repeat that, Pedro, because we only got part of what you said.
I was saying maybe the simple way to look at it is, do the trustees want the board to take a position if the governor or senator were to sponsor a piece of legislation that says the board should be comprised of X number of individuals with these types of requirements, educational or otherwise, similar to what was done several months ago. That's what 2B basically addresses.
Yeah, because basically,
if the answer is you think the board should take a position, then we need to take out 2B. If your position is the board should not take a position, then we leave it in.
So this basically says that if something comes up, we don't take a position on it at all.
So does that also mean that if we're asked, let's say you're asked to testify or to give, so you just say no? Is that what we're saying?
You say that the board has no position on this.
Okay.
Or the board takes no position on this.
If you leave it in, then your response will be pursuant to, and you cite the section, the board is prohibited from taking a position on this type of legislation.
Now, if you take it out now, then
you could give them your position.
Now, in February, I was asked to testify on, that bill where they wanted to improve the education requirement for board members. And of course, we didn't think it would, we were not against, I was not against increasing the education requirements. My position was it was just not going to help the system because the system problem was funding. Amazingly, when we got there, I think we had one question about the bill, and they asked us everything else about Carambola and everything else. So we need to be careful when we decide we want to go and testify about something, because once you get there, you're open to be questioned for anything.
To abuse.
Then this would be a coverage for any board member to say, well, our board policy prohibits us from taking a position on any legislation that deals with this issue.
The problem with that is, if they're doing wrong, why do you want to keep quiet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's
they're wrong.
So that's why it's like this. Like you understand? So now what do we want to do?
I'm going to weigh in on this. I think you need to leave your options open. You can always decide as a board later on when the bill comes up that you won't take a position. But you don't want to permanently ban yourself, because what if they suddenly pass the bill saying that we're going to have 30 members, we're going to expand the board to be 30 members and no educational requirements whatsoever? You may want to take a position on that, and you don't want to be prohibited. So I think you should do it on a case-by-case basis and preserve your right to make that decision at the time, depending on the legislation.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which means we would delete this paragraph, correct?
Yes.
That was us, Dr. Cohen, but we leave it to others who weren't part of that conversation.
Okay. I agree. Delete it.
Okay, Dr. Callender?
I agree with that. Delete it.
Go. That's right.
Like that.
Just like a so. Okay, and section 3 basically was the same as always. Nothing changed since the last one. So this was the only other thing, Kathy. I was unsure, so I told Pedro, ask Kathy.
I mean, there's a provision in the investment statute that allows you to vary, and we've used that position before, and I walked off without my code, if you think it will negatively affect. So,
Yes.
I'm trying to read it in context.
I was? Why?
Third thing. Yeah, I'm trying to read it in context, and
No.
I think I'm missing. Oh, okay. I mean, yeah, I think you want to comment on it.
One of my favorite sisters, so there's no way it could be.
Liga, could you mute your...
Well, I think.
He's away. He can't hear you.
Yeah, I would think that in situations where it's gonna affect your ability to carry out your fiduciary responsibilities, you would want to be able to comment on that.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think we could have thought of a situation where this may be applicable, but going back to your earlier statement, Kathy, you want to keep your options open.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't hurt for us to keep it in.
I can think of one when they passed the legislation trying to force the board to redo loans, to open a loan program. That was legislation that would have affected your ability, your fiduciary responsibilities.
And then that fits. That would be. It should be brought to the full board.
Covered on the earlier section, but we want to oppose legislation because we believe it's going to.
Well, it said that it has to come to the board first. It said something has to come to the full board. That's what this section says. So we don't just say decide it or not. It's not stated. It's there.
Okay.
So that we have to have the discussion as a board before we decide. Others are written, but in order for this to take place, it has to be discuss.
But that's if you have time, because sometimes things come up quickly and the board may not have time to meet to discuss. That's the only drawback to that. Sometimes you could be there and they add an amendment to some legislation that would affect your responsibility, and you don't have time to get to the board. You may be able to get to the chairman, but you can't get to the full board. So that's just limiting you. But it doesn't happen often, but it is a situation that could happen and has happened.
So the recommendation is to let it stay.
Yeah, I would let it stay. And, the only problem is bringing it to the attention of the full board. Sometimes, like I said, you may not be able to get to the full board.
When time permits?
Yeah, put the time permits or something. So that gives you a leeway. If something comes up like today, they tell Mr. Nibbs they're going to do something tonight. He can get to the board chair, but he might not be able to get to everybody.
So, Pedro, is that good? It was time permits or no?
I wouldn't even add that. I'm saying with the technology we have today, it's just a matter of sending out a text or an email and at least getting a sense of, what the board members' thinking is.
Okay.
Or doing a poll vote if you have to.
But Pedro, everybody doesn't always respond right away. That's the only problem.
Well, you deal with what you have.
Alrighty. Okay. So everything else is the same. Everything else was just cosmetic. We're going to go through it one more time, adjust all the numbers and letters and the formatting. And it's ready for printing and whatever else we do with it. Any other questions? Any questions at all? So if we get this, Dr. Canley, your lips are moving, but no sound is coming.
Yes, I was muted. Sorry. Does this policy have anything dealing with sexual harassment?
Now that I'm ready for the thing had to pass, you're gonna bring in something else?
Well, I was not the committee.
I don't believe it specifically mentions that.
No, I don't. I didn't put anything in there at the time. I never thought about it.
Right, but in the ethics, there was some mention of a couple things that sexual harassment would be in there.
That is something that is critical, that can we approve it and also plan
No, put it in and come back.
No, because we'll have to put that somewhere in a code of ethics, or we'll have to add that to the ethical statement of ethical conduct. Give me a second. Status 13.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, it's something we're trying to get this for posterity.
I think sexual harassment has been elevated beyond ethics. It's more like criminal behavior than ethical behavior. William?
See, I think, and what happened, I think most of this stuff that I dealt with was financial. I didn't even put, so we just need a statement of.
You should put also a statement of discrimination and sexual harassment. You should have both. Just to conform.
And discrimination.
We need to table
So,
Yeah.
question. So we won't be able to pass this until I put that in there. So I have to do that and then send it back out and then come back?
Yes.
Well, why can't you just put the sexual harassment will not be
It has to be it has to be a full statement. Do you have any written documentation right now, Pedro? that you can pull up?
Should be in our
We probably
handbook.
could look at what's in the GRS employee handbook. That would be a
Yeah.
start. And we could probably modify that to put in here.
And they have training.
That's in my other computer. Oh, where's my jump drive? Give me a sec.
So my recommendation be that, you know, we've had the discussion, we table this, we add those two provisions about sexual harassment and discrimination, and then bring it back for the next board meeting.
Okay.
It's all Dr. Calendar's fault.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay, because it's something we needed to do. So 8, 9, and 10 will be sexual harassment and discrimination. So I'll pull the information, I'll pull the what's in the employee manual handbook and make it referable to the board. Oh, wait a minute, I might be able to, do I have it on my, I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute. Okay.
Yes.
So we'll continue, Mr. Chair, we could continue and then I'll put it in and come back.
But even if it is there, we're probably gonna have to amend the language to make it.
That's what I just said.
To trustees where it says.
That's what I said, by the time we come back out of new business, I might be able to have it before we close out. Hello?
All right. Yes.
So, but if we continue with the meeting and finish our new business by the end of new business and we come back into old business before we close out, I may be able to have it.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Okay. So this portion of the meeting will be closed to the public for matters pertaining to trade secrets or financial or commercial information or personal or legal or matters whose premature disclosure will frustrate the implementation of the proposed agency action. I need a motion to go to an executive session.
So moved.
Second. Who call?
Second.
Dr.
Trustee Carwood,
Yes.
Trustee Barry,
Yes.
Trustee Cohen,
Yes.
Trustee Liger. Trustee Liger. Jeez.
He's on mute. He's on mute.
Mr. Liger, I can't hear you.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. I said yes.
McDonald absent. Trustee Smith excused. Chairman Calendar.
Yes.
5 yes, 1 absent. Excused.
All right. So we take a few minutes.
Okay.
Need a 5-minute break. Yes?
I don't, because I have no breakfast.
What does that mean?
Well, I am ready to continue.
Before you do that, let me just say, since there's no retreat in July, there isn't a board meeting scheduled. So
Yes.
you will need to have a date for July.
Last Thursday.
So if it would be the 23rd, if we're following the normal calendar.
Yes.
Okay.
1 second, wait, I guess I think I had accepted negotiations. Let me double check the date.
I could do something on that day too.
Yeah, I have to check because I think I had I accepted it. I think that was one of the dates OCB had sent me.
Yeah, Carolyn?
Okay, where is that?
I'm not gonna be here because I was taking half the day off because I committed to something for my organization.
On a date?
Yeah, on the 30th, if they do it on the 30th, because I committed to it and it's a big event that we planned and I have to do hosting duties too, so I can't change. Because nothing was on the calendar for that date when it was suggested, so I said, okay, fine. Any day but that week. It's the one day.
Wednesday.
Thursday?
Wait, the dates are acceptable for me.
Which date is that?
Trustee Carolyn?
Which date is that?
The 30th.
I thought they said the 23rd.
The 23rd.
Okay, 23rd is fine.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, perfect.
Everybody, 23rd is okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next board meeting on the 23rd.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we can move on? Unfinished business, Haven site update.
Yeah.
For the next board meeting on the 23rd, could we get the documents before the 22nd?
We hope.
I had to put that there.
Are we off?
Well, one of the provisions in the governance policy is that you should get all these documents 3 business days before the meeting.
How many?
3.
Oh, okay. What section is that?
I don't know that I could pull it up, but I know it's
In the
in there.
beginning.
I'm just kidding. Right, not really. So it's a lot of stuff to go through the night.
We taking our 5-minute break?
Was it? Yes, we had a break.
No. Mr. Ned,
Yes.
ready to do the Haven site update?
Yes, I thought you said you wanted.
All right. Well, Mr. Liger said no. So
I'm
you
ready.
need to-
I am ready.
Okay.
Okay, trustees,